Hello and welcome everybody to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all cryptocurrency news from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. I go by Blind Run on the internet and Matthew in real life, and today we are going to have yet another crypto mining show talking about crypto, all the latest news topics with that twist of coming from a miner. Now, today's show is brought to you by viewers just like you through support on sonofatech.locals.com. If you want to support the channel, I try to avoid sponsorships and the likes to avoid any sort of bias that may be present due to that. Of course, I will still always have biases because I do mine crypto and therefore I do hold certain cryptocurrencies. So hopefully, I do my best at reporting fairly across the board there, but it does need to be acknowledged. That being said, today we're going to be talking about U.S. Bitcoin Reserve under consideration, and this is coming from the new Crypto Czar. We're also going to be talking about the RTX 5090 hash rates that we saw over on Red Panda Mining's channel yesterday evening. We will then talk about SEC scaling back the crypto enforcement efforts, thank goodness. And we will be talking about Elon Musk's Doge and the actual access that he does have to the federal government data systems, all that sort of stuff. There's been a lot of FUD surrounding it, so I kind of want to give my perspective on it. And then USPS has halted shipments and packages from China. So we're going to take a look at what's been going on there. Obviously, big news for anybody trying to order any sort of ASIC units or even GPUs or cheaper computer electronics off of places like Alibaba. And then we'll talk about the transparency Treasury, the blockchain transparent ledger for essentially the U.S. Treasury that is being proposed by Elon Musk. And then we have all of our proof of work news, including the Quai network, or Quai. I keep forgetting how to pronounce it. Anyways, they have launched Mainnet today. Plenty of other YouTubers have already released their how to mine videos. Feel free to go check those out, including Rabid Panda Mining. All the usual suspects have released those. So we'll take a look at how the network's shaping up to be. I can show you guys also how it is being mined on the 5090 back here, or 5080 back here, if you're interested, at the end of the show. And then we're going to talk about some updates from Clore, who has released their beta app. And then there is some crazy proposals being voted on for Conflux that you should be aware of as well. And then we'll also be talking about performance degradation on the RTX 5090 and some things that we've seen there. And a response to the Xeggex situation from non-KYC. These are all coming and more in just a little bit. First, I want to say thank you to everybody that's showing up in chat. Frank, thanks for stopping in. Crypto Mikkel is a fellow content creator. Make sure you guys head on over and follow his channel. We also have Sasquatch in the house. Good to see you again. Todd is here, and Vinny as well as John Bronson, Integra Guy, and B More. Thanks everybody for being here. It's good to see you guys. Pretty exciting stuff going on in the world these days. A lot of movement, specifically surrounding cryptocurrency. I'm going to get my headphones on here. But the first topic for today is going to be the U.S. Bitcoin Reserve under consideration, says Trump's crypto czar. David Sachs is who we're referencing here as the crypto czar, who was appointed as the White House AI and crypto czar by President Trump. And he has publicly described Bitcoin as an excellent store of value and suggested the potential establishment of a U.S. Bitcoin Reserve. This has sparked considerable discussion amongst crypto enthusiasts and policymakers, indicating a possible shift in U.S. cryptocurrency policy towards integration and regulation. We've talked a lot recently about the importance of regulation so that the sheep will follow and not be fearful. And we're seeing, that this will hopefully enable a lot of innovation within the space as regulation is formed that is very clear surrounding it within the United States. And with that innovation, of course, comes new money into the ecosystem, adding liquidity to all of the markets and thereby kind of raising all of the ships. Now, sometimes those ships aren't going to raise quite as high as they have in the past, which we've been talking a little bit about here recently. I was disappointed earlier this week when we were hearing about essentially the digital, what was that called again? I'm already blanking, but it was essentially the digital reserve. It wasn't a reserve, strategic, anyways, investment that was signed by Trump that effectively was more leaning towards basically purchasing stocks in companies. Like TikTok was the only one actually mentioned in that particular piece of legislation. And I wasn't a big fan of that. I still am not. And I was scared that we weren't even going to see any Bitcoin mentioned, but now we are seeing specifically US Bitcoin Reserve mentioned. And here is a little video of him talking about it.
Order in the first week that it's the policy of his administration to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technologies across all sectors of the economy. And he established an executive branch working
sovereign
group for
wealth
digital
fund.
Assets, which includes
that's what it was.
Secretary Besson at Treasury, Secretary Noem, soon to be confirmed Attorney General Bondi, Secretary Lutnick at Commerce, and all the other key administration officials that have an equity in crypto. And similarly, the SEC has set up a crypto task force led by Hester Peirce, which is also looking at this issue. And together, our objective is to accomplish the task the president assigned for us in his EO, which is to propose a federal regulatory framework governing the issuance and operation of digital assets, including stablecoins, in the United States.
We've already heard this one,
I've talked
right?
to many founders over the past few years.
I don't think this mentions specifically anything about Bitcoin.
From Washington
maybe he does.
Regulatory clarity. They just want to know what the rules of the road are so they can abide by them. We're coming off, frankly, 4 years of arbitrary prosecution and persecution
Welcome to the channel,
of crypto
Hawk.
companies where the SEC wouldn't tell founders what the rules were, but then they would prosecute them. And many founders have even told me stories of being debanked personally just because they had...
Yeah, and we definitely read the transcript from this on Monday. So if you guys are interested, go back to Monday's podcast, and there's also a clip of this in particular. I was more looking for the Bitcoin Reserve video. Maybe this will be it.
David, recast for us, if you will, the value of Bitcoin specifically, cryptocurrency and blockchain technology in general, as we're now in the Trump administration era. We're in the back half of the 2020s. Back 5 years ago plus, there was talks about, using it as a means of buying things. Now it's more about the store of value and the way, perhaps hedge against inflation in various currencies. What do you see as the real value and the reason why the United States government should be paying so much attention to it?
Well, I think there's a few different aspects here when you're talking about digital aspects. So first of all, you got Bitcoin. It was the first digital currency, and it's the original. It's the strongest one. In the parlance of the industry, it's the most lindy, meaning it's been around for over a dozen years now. No one's ever hacked it. No one's ever cracked the security around it. And so it is an excellent store of value. So that would be point number one. Bitcoin is run on, as you know, a blockchain. It's basically a distributed ledger, which is essentially a form of decentralized computing. And that platform can be used to create a lot of other types of products. And so that would be sort of technology area number two, is all the innovation that can be built on top of blockchains. And then...
Okay. So I guess that mentions it a little bit. I thought we were going to get more out of it. Let's see. That's only 49 seconds here.
That's on the table here. What goes into that process? Is that something that would be standalone, or is that something that could potentially be tucked into,
this is what I want to know.
Sovereign Wealth Fund, which has been the speculation today on the heels of that executive order?
I guess it's possible that the Sovereign Wealth Fund could decide that they want to make Bitcoin or digital assets part of its portfolio. You're going to have to ask the incoming Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, about that. The item that President Trump asked our working group on digital assets to study is whether it's feasible to create either a Bitcoin reserve or some sort of digital asset.
So that would be a
stockpile.
separate reserve.
So we're going to be looking at that question. We haven't committed yet to doing it. But
so basically, that could be a portion of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but this discussion, as far as a Bitcoin reserve, would be a separate reserve in this particular scenario. It sounded like to me, at least right now, the only asset that we can be confirmed of in the Sovereign Wealth Fund is shares in TikTok, which I disagree with vehemently. But, that's, I mean, obviously they kind of cast a big old net for the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I mean, it can include stocks, it can include, bonds, other commodities, a bunch of digital assets. So I think that's going to be separate, though, is what it sounds like to me. And I suppose the distinction would be a reserve versus a wealth fund. And how those will be leveraged is really going to be probably where the distinction comes in. And I'm not sure what those leverages will be. Either way, I mean, the Trojan horse is trucking along, especially with the Trump administration, and governments around the world, including state governments, are starting, to look at protecting their wealth within Bitcoin. And that does mean eventually that, well, since there's only so much Bitcoin, the price has to increase. You compound those factors with things like inflation, and it's kind of game over. The question is of course, can you fully back? Would it be possible in any scenario to fully back the dollar by Bitcoin, whether that's based on sats or something along those lines, and go back to something along the lines of a gold standard, but with sats? Is that a possibility? I mean, I think so. Is that what they're actually going to do? I don't think so. I think right now, depending on what Doge does with, Elon Musk looking into everything, which we'll talk about here in just a second, I don't foresee the Federal Reserve wanting to give up the power of devaluing the US dollar and destroying individuals' retirement for their own profit. There's just so much money in that for the top 1%. I think that's going to be a hard fight across the board. Is it possible? Sure. We've seen a lot of crazy stuff happen over the past couple weeks since inauguration on January 20th. But I think it's up in the air right now. Good news ending this, of course, I mean, across the board, is that the Bitcoin reserve is on the table and it is separate from the sovereign wealth fund. So I think as far as all that's concerned, I think it's very good. Now, last night, if you guys didn't see, we had Red Panda Mining gain access to the RTX 5090 via a viewer. And I'm going to post that link in chat for you guys to check out. Be sure to go ahead and give the video a like. I'm just going to go over some of the key points. Now, what I have found is I did provide the overclocks, at least for the memory and for the core clocks, best I could with the limited amount of time we had. And we were able to garner some pretty interesting information. We saw, I believe this was Zealous Hash, which is where we kind of started out at. And you saw that we were able to essentially get the memory up to 16,801 megahertz. And that was with a plus 3,000 memory offset overclock. And that is actually about 1,000 megahertz below what the RTX 5080 that's back here on the bench gets. So not all GDDR7 is created equal. I mean, the actual modules themselves could. What I think's going on is the actual memory configuration, not dissimilar to like going from dual channel to quad channel on memory. If you go from dual channel to quad channel on system memory, basically your XMP profiles have to be knocked down a little bit. You lose a little bit of basically a little bit of clock performance, right? I think because the 5080 or 5090 has a lot more memory on board and it has different configuration, I think that's what we're running into. That's why we're seeing only 16,801 megahertz versus the 17,801 megahertz on the 5080. Of course, I don't know either exactly which model this was. Maybe one of y'all in chat can tell me. I think it was a Founders Edition, which you would think would be binned pretty high. But I do have the Asus TUF Edition over here. And from what we could tell as well, the temperatures seem to be running okay. They were still, like you can see here, at least what's reporting in software, that once we started overclocking the memory on the 5090 Founders, it was at 82C. Now, in comparison to the RTX 5080, that's about 10 to 12C degree difference, like delta. Basically, it's running that much hotter on the 5090. Could that just be actually all temperature limitations on the GDDR7? Yes, and that would be the good news. And basically it would mean that the Founders Edition is not trading blows with like an Asus TUF Edition. Of course, the TUF Edition is going to be $300 to $500 more, but your memory is going to run cooler. It's going to have higher overclocking potential. these are kind of the things I'm keeping an eye out for. You know, in the past here through the 3000 series, it was kind of like Founders Edition for the best binning, the best temperatures, all that sort of thing. For the most part, it's looking like it is shifting back into the hands of the third parties, at least on the upper end models. And that is not just liquid cooled, because the Tough Edition's only air cooled. Now, on the core, I think the 5090 needs a ton more research done on it in particular, because right now all I could do was say, how low can we get it, right? Now on the 5080, keep in mind, of course, your core clocks are going to be different across board models, as well as, you know, vendors, all that sort of stuff. But it is still Ada, right? Or Blackwell. So Ada Blackwell, is that what it is? Yeah, Ada Lovelace, Ada Blackwell. So the 5080 will downclock all the way to 1700 megahertz on the core. And what that gives you is a superior advantage to essentially the efficiency numbers. And that is what we were finding for sure, is like, because the 5090 really couldn't get below, it appeared to me, 2100 megahertz, right? It seemed as if on the 5090, we had to always have, even if we did a 1700 base, we had to add the plus 400. Otherwise, the card would crash. That means that essentially you are utilizing more power and you don't really have that capability of going down. Now, typically, if you are, you know, underclocking a card, underclocking performs the same across, you know, all models. There's not usually, you can't usually go even further down. It's when you start trying to go up at a lower voltage that you end up basically seeing the performance differences of the better binning, right? So because the 5090 is binned very well, and presumably because it was a Founders Edition, and because essentially it won't go below that mark, I do think that efficiency-wise, it's just not going to be on par with, say, like the 5070 Ti or even the 5080. And that seemed to prove out true, right? You can go over the whole video if you want. Some other takeaways, I believe, was like ergo, which we did get up to the 530 mega hash a second on ergo, and that was at 1.2 mega hash a second per watt. Was better efficiency on the 5080 as well on that one. And then so it did get all the way up to 583. That's right. Okay. And that's when we had the plus 3000 plus the 1700 plus 400 offset on the core. That got to 1.5. Wait, that was almost 2 mega hash a second per watt. Now, the 5080 is like way up there, like 2.4 type thing. But there is still more tweaking, not a lot of time on it. But even like at these clocks, like the 5080, I still have to play with the 5080 more, and it's already kind of wiping the board with the 5090 on efficiency levels. It is pretty cool though to see like basically almost 600 mega hash a second on ergo. That's just really neat. And then he tested a few other ones. I think, was this the highest he got up? Yeah, once he pumped the core to like 2197, he was able to get over 600 mega hash a second. That was just done for fun. Keep in mind that efficiency was not good. So that's not something you'd want to push for, you know, on a 24/7 mining situation. The mem got really, really hot as well. You can see here that the memory was getting up to 94 degrees C reported in temperature. That's like 24 degrees Celsius above that of the 5080 and at 1000 megahertz less. So I think the Founders Edition is not the route you want to go. I don't know what they're doing to cool the memory, but it doesn't seem to be the route at this point. It seems like, especially in a mining scenario, that you want to go the route of aftermarket cooler. I also, it's hard to gauge how accurate this is with just remote access. I think, what was the other one he had up here? He did go over, yeah, the octopus was 175. I believe the fish hash was in here somewhere, but I'll let you guys go watch the video to see the rest of it. Those are my initial thoughts right now. If somebody was to ask me, like, which 50 series that's currently out should I buy, I would say the 5080, if we were talking specifically for mining. If we were talking about which 50 series overall, my first inclination is to say wait for the 5070 Ti. There's a specific reason for that. You have less CUDA cores, right? But you have the exact same memory as you do on the 5080. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have the same performance as far as total hash rate to the 5080 on memory intensive algorithms. So, Ergo, ETC hash, a fish hash, Octopus even to a certain extent, Ravencoin, Zealous, right? So all that stuff is going to be better in general on the memory intensive algos. And since you are using less CUDA cores on the 5070 Ti but have the same memory performance, I think it's going to be the efficiency king. Like, I think it's going to wipe the board with everything else currently out. The 5080 is already, except for fish hash and ETC hash, and of course Ravencoin, it's wiping the board with everything, even the CMP 170. So Ravencoin, obviously, Kapow, all that sort of stuff. AMD's the way to go for that. I wouldn't recommend any NVIDIA GPU at this point for that one in particular. You could argue in the case of, like, if you would ever mine any ET hash coin ever, or if you're into fish hash. So fish hash, CMP 170, if that's your bag. I think if you're mining ET hash based coins with a GPU, you're doing it wrong. I think at this point, just scratch that idea. Outside of maybe, of course, ET hash B3 on Hypera. But Hypera's struggling. They just lost their community manager. I'm not sure we're going to see Hypera be successful whatsoever. Just a side note there. I think they're really struggling. And I actually do have mined it. And I do have a bag. It's just, if I'm objectively looking at it, it seems like they're struggling really bad over there. So I wouldn't, literally buy a card for that. Now, a lot of people will say, well, the CMP 170 is going to be 500, the 5080 is going to be 1,000. Yes, I get that point. I understand it. A resale value on the 5080 is astronomically better than the CMP 170. Okay. You resell a CMP 170, you're reselling it to miners. End of story. Game over. Doesn't matter. I mean, unless you're like, you trick someone, which is just unethical. It's just, that's the way it is. The 5080, you can mine on that thing, and then, we got a 3-year cycle, 2 to 3 year cycle, it's about a good 2 years of being able to resell whatever the latest gen NVIDIA that was released, with maybe people starting to wait for the next gen 3 years in, right? Something like that. Anyways, so you have a lot more resale ability on the 50 series as far as that's concerned. Now, AI throwing that kink into it, of course, I think you probably still want to lean towards probably like a 4090 or potentially a 5090. And that's a fair point. And if 4090 GPUs come down in price to like that $1,000 price mark, I think a 4090 over a 5080 just makes sense across the board. You have more options. It's going to last a little bit longer. as well, and it'll outsell a CMP 170 on the secondhand market as well. So all those things kind of think about as we start getting more numbers rolling in for Blackwell, and I'm super excited though. I think it's pretty cool. Let's talk about the big one though, which is going to be the SEC scales back crypto enforcement efforts. A big problem across the board. You know, everybody's aware that I went back, got a day job. There's other external factors, personal life, needed health insurance, you know, going through a divorce, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't really matter. The big thing that really hurt, obviously, from a YouTuber perspective as a full-time YouTuber, especially in the way that I was running it and everything along those lines, because I didn't want to take coin sponsorships or anything like that. We could argue if that was really worth it. I don't know. That being said, what happened from a YouTube ad revenue perspective was a ton of regulations came in and YouTube cut off basically all the ad revenue for crypto channels. And you had a big problem with a lot of suppression of the channels, just if they were crypto channels because of the fear of the regulations going and surrounding it. You had the down crypto market, which then impacted, you know, crypto companies being able to sponsor content creators, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of that had to do with the regulation, right? And to give you an idea, right, what YouTube ad revenue runs off of is it runs off of clicks per mile. It's called CPM for short. And it's basically the dollar amount you get paid for every 1,000 views. And in 2021, the average CMP was about $22 to $28. That's per 1,000 views for a crypto channel like mine. Astronomically good, right? Now, when the regulations started coming in, those click per mile dollars went down to like $4. So then if you also compound that factor with suppression of the content, from a content perspective, as far as the algorithm and everything, the loss of interest in the market because of obviously the declining prices of cryptocurrency and the declining profitability of mining. And then you slap on a bunch of regulation on top of that, you pretty much destroy that, that business model, right? There's lots of creators that made it through. There's different ways that a lot of people did it. I think it's great. Everybody chose their own path. What I see here, and the reason I think this is important, is because what it's going to allow for, and the whole point to this, is that it's going to allow for basically a lightening of the rules on social media surrounding advertisement from crypto companies, which will be important for everybody involved, including the companies that are trying to sell their product, right? I mean, I still don't have a bank account. I've been doing cryptocurrency YouTube and mining for a long time now. 9 years. We're going on 10 years now. I still can't get a freaking bank account, right? What this will hopefully do is alleviate those issues. And then when I go to the bank, you know, it's crazy too, because I'd go to the bank with tons of cash in 21 and be like, I just need some place to hold this. And they were like, no, you're related to crypto, right? It's just insane. But what this will do is it's going to bring the CPM levels up for the content creators, which is going to encourage them to create more content. Just by nature, that's how that works. Grand idea. If you get paid more, you're more incentivized to do it. That's human nature. And then because they're getting paid more and making more content, more people are going to hear about it, thereby bringing more liquidity into the market and pumping the levels up. So that's the whole arc of what we've seen. And hopefully I explained it well enough to where you understand why this is important, right? And we have the top crypto litigator transferred into the IT department for SEC. So that's going to be cool. And they're re-signing over 50 lawyers working on cryptocurrency cases. So they're dropping a bunch of cases as well. Now, you could say, is this going to have bad ramifications later on down the lines with things like, FTX, so on and so forth? I am still a strong believer in, personal responsibility and individual rights. I don't think the government should get involved at all. I think you should just not be a stupid dummy and fall for a scam. That's how I see it. Now, I've even fallen for scams. I don't go crying to the government about it. I go, well, crap, I learned my lesson there. You know what I mean? And maybe if some people just accepted responsibility in this damn society, things would be a lot better than always trying to push it off on somebody else and then destroying entire industries by doing that. That's how I feel about it. I know other people are going to disagree, but if you disagree, go get a bank account, operate in fiat currency, and that's for you. I don't need all this protection. I don't need a condom for my cryptocurrency, okay? I don't. I just don't. And I don't think that should be the first reaction. Is to just play the victim. I don't think that that's helpful for anyone. And all it's been doing is stifling innovation. And if you want to take FTX as an example, right? Well, they were operating in the Bahamas to get past regulatory issues, which skips all the oversight. And if it was more clear for regulations within the US, maybe that sort of thing would have been caught in the first place. Right? But let's not even talk about the DNC and their crap with FTX. Oh, we'll come and protect you just because we got caught. You got caught and then ruined everybody else's lives. It's crazy. Oh, it's crazy. So the Crypto Task Force is the new thing. It seeks to provide clarity on application of the federal securities law to the crypto asset market and to recommend practical policy measures that aim to foster innovation and protect investors. I hate that word, protect. I hate it. But hopefully what we're seeing is it's going to be a little bit lightened up. It looks like the actual implementation of this so far with 50 lawyers being moved off of cases is that it's going in the correct direction. So I applaud correct direction, and I do think overall this is bullish for the entire industry. All right, so I'm probably going to rub some people the wrong way and others the right way and vice versa. But let's talk about this. The biggest breach of the US government data is underway. This is a pretty loaded TechCrunch article. You can definitely tell that they have a strong bias against Elon Musk. I don't like Elon Musk because he lies and cheats at Path of Exile 2. I mean, I'm petty when it comes to video games. Look, I played Diablo 3 hardcore as a barbarian religiously in my late 20s. And I got to 104 on the leaderboard, and it felt really good. And I put a lot of time and a lot of work into doing that. And it still pisses me off that this dude will go pay someone to level up for him and then take that slot from someone. Look, some people, that's all they have. At that time, that's all I had. I'd gone through a divorce. Yes, I've gone through 2 divorces, so obviously I'm the issue. I understand that. We're working on it. But, I go through the divorce. I think I had lost a job even. I had started a new one. I was working from home, that sort of thing, working in IT. And, it meant something to be able to get on that leaderboard, that accomplishment of putting work into something and getting it. And that to be taken away by someone that can just pay to get it done, it just seems unethical and wrong. I don't like it. it pisses me off. But that being said, I'm not going to say that that means that he doesn't build good rockets and that he doesn't have an extremely successful electric car business and that he understands government spending and contracts because he utilizes those in both of his space projects and his electric car company, along with everything else. He clearly knows all of that stuff extremely well. Now, the big question here is, which has been asked and answered, so I'll give you the question, was going to be what happens to the government spending on the contracts that he takes advantage of. And as far as I understand, and confirmed by both Trump and Musk, Musk will be pulled off of the review of those particular government spending areas. So that sounds good. How true it is, it's hard to prove anything, but at least that sounds good. So hopefully that'll be the case. But TechCrunch, this is weird. It's very baited, and you'll see why. So they say operatives working for Elon Musk have gained unprecedented access to a swath of U.S. government departments, including agencies responsible for managing data on millions of federal employees and system that handles $6 trillion in payments to Americans. During the past 2 weeks, Musk's group of representatives, a presidential advisory board within the Trump administration, known as the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE for short, have taken control of top federal departments and data sets. Despite questions about their security clearances, their cybersecurity practices, and the legality of Musk's activities. Whether a feat or a coup, which depends entirely on your point of view, a small group of mostly young private sector employees from Musk's businesses and associates, many with no prior government experience, can now view and, in some cases, control the federal government's most sensitive data. That second part of that statement is a downright lie, okay? It has been made very clear in press conferences that they have read-only access. And if you've ever worked on government systems, which I have, I've been working in IT for over a decade now, and I worked for an MSP and we had government contracts. One, I presume all of these individuals had to go through some background checks. You just have to. So to act like they don't have any government experience and they didn't go through a vetting process seems a little ridiculous to me. I don't think that is even possible. I think that is kind of blown out of proportion. And second to that, it's very easy to control read versus write access. So to say that they have control over the data is downright false. They're not deleting data, writing new data, or anything like that. They're reviewing and vetting it. And to be completely frank with you, I'd rather have somebody outside the government doing that. Because clearly the way we've been doing it recently is not working. It's just not working anymore. You need somebody that's going to go in there and be like, why the hell are you spending $600 million on sushi? And whatever the heck they spent on coffee or whatever. Can you imagine working at like a private corporation and then HR's like, we need to have an average of 45 K-cups per employee per day, even on holidays. No. Absolutely not. And that's why you need somebody that runs businesses to come in and say, hey, look, you're spending too much money on dumb shit. But anyways, that was blown out of proportion as well. The access by Musk's Doge team represents the widest known compromise of the federal government, held data by a private group of individuals, and little has gotten in their way. Doge has acknowledged few details about its ongoing activities. The task has been left to the media, which isn't that the way it's supposed to be? the media is the gatekeepers of what's going on to the public. That's literally the function of media. Are you complaining that you have to do your job now? Ridiculous. So they do say that there's some questionable cybersecurity practices and the breakdown in long-standing cybersecurity norms that risk sensitive government data from being accessed by nefarious actors. I don't see, and maybe I'll need to go look into it more, but I don't know what these sources are for this. I guess it says, for example, a Doge staffer reportedly used a personal Gmail account to access a government call. Okay. And a newly filed lawsuit by federal whistleblowers claims Doge ordered an unauthorized email server to be connected to the government network, which violates a federal privacy law. If that's happening, of course, that will have to be cleaned up. Fair enough. This can't happen. Sure. Can't have Hillary's emails getting out, you know what I mean? Whether Doge staffers are bad actors misses the point. And by the way, I've been in situations where coworkers that have made, let's say, very slight cybersecurity errors completely on accident have ended up, being in court for like 6 months. I'm sure all that's going to happen to these guys. Like that just happens, especially when you have basically private citizens working on government infrastructure, IT infrastructure. That happens a lot more than you would think it would, because it can literally come down to somebody, a private citizen was left in a room with a desktop computer for like 30 seconds and then boom. Now you're in a court case for 6 months to a year. That has happened a lot. And that was nothing. These things are not malicious, right? It's just that the amount of regulation and how strict it is surrounding these types of things will just end up having to be reviewed. And I bet they will be, at least in my experience. It's hard to say, we're a week into this one. So they do say that there is questionable security clearances. The ease in which Doge took over the departments and their vast stores of Americans' data took career officials and U.S. lawmakers by surprise, who continue to seek answers from the Trump administration. Musk's efforts to take control of the nation's data stores also privately alarmed cybersecurity professionals, some of whom have spent their careers in government dedicated to securing Americans' most sensitive systems and data. Questions remain about what level of security clearance the Doge staff have and whether their interim security clearance gives them the authority to demand access to restricted federal systems. On returning to office, Trump signed an executive order allowing administration officials to grant top secret and compartmentalized security clearance to individuals on an interim basis with little to no substantial vetting, a sharp departure from long-established protocols. And I wonder what that, obviously, if it's signed in as an executive order, that's the new rule there. The confusion over Doge staff clearances has led to a brief standoff between several career officials at federal departments in recent days. At the U.S. Agency for International Deployment, senior officials were put on leave after standing in the way of Doge staff to protect classified information, according to the Associated Press. Doge subsequently gained access to the classified facility at USAID, which reportedly contained intelligence reports. Katie Miller, an advisor for Doge, said in an X post that no classified material was associated by Doge without proper security clearances. And I think this is part of the problem that we have, at least the way I read this, and like I said, if I'm looking at this and I'm standing back completely objectively and I listen to what both sides are saying, it sounds like to me there are two groups of people, and this is common. Like, let's say I'm an MSP, right? Managed service provider. So I do IT service for corporations and the government. Let's say it's a government contract, right? You'll have different levels of security clearance of employees within your operation, right? And if it's not required to have security clearance for whatever particular thing that it is, then you can have somebody with either lower security clearance or none do that particular task. And so what it sounds like to me, at least, just because of the way I know the inner workings are from being in the industry, is that they do have tiers of security clearance within Doge, and they are properly assigning those tasks out. And it sounds like to me, everybody reporting on it doesn't know how these things work. At least that's what it feels like to me. And then because of political biases, are blowing this out of proportion. I could be completely wrong. But it just doesn't add up when you hear that they say, one, there's only read access, right? And then they try to say, oh, they have control over the files. Well, it's read access, so kind of, yes, but they're not doing what you imply, which is writing over the files. And then they say, essentially, there are people that don't have security clearance that are getting access. But, if you talk to an advisor, it's clear that they do have individuals that do have security clearances within that organization. Anyways, extremely frustrating to dig through all of this in general, because it's hard to tell, here's the way I see it. Both sides are going to make mistakes, and both sides are going to also have some wins. And what those are always obfuscated by both sides, to the point to where it's really hard to dig through it. But like I said before, overall, this is kind of what the American people wanted from this administration, which was get the bureaucrats out, get someone in there that can actually tell us exactly what's happening. And unfortunately, that means getting people in there that are not a part of the cog in the machine. So it says it's happened within a week. There's a lot more on this. Links down in the description below. That's kind of the part I wanted to talk about, because that's where I have expertise specifically, as a systems engineer and working in IT for so long. So I thought maybe I could give some kind of background there on how those processes work and go from there. Overall, I think it should be really interesting, and I think will be net positive at the end of the day. If you believe in cryptocurrency and what it stands for, a big part of that is transparency. And there is the argument that for the safety of, military operations, that sort of thing, that some things need to be secret and so on. And I can understand that point of view, but it seems to me that we have a lot more things classified than should be classified. And if you're about the ethos of cryptocurrency, then you would, I think, agree with me that there should be more transparency in governance. Here's a little bit more on it. There's been an agreement between Trump and Musk that you said should be essentially shut down. Now, this impacts, the only reason I bring this up is because of the negative press and the way that you said is talking about, Doge. So you understand the perspective that there are real human beings that have jobs, have careers, been doing this, whose careers are at risk. And so that is going to influence the way that it's talked about and what you hear from them, right? Frankly, that is why it's such a contentious issue. Is you are messing with the livelihoods of individuals, and that will create a bias in that department against, obviously, the other department, the Doge department, right? Now, I don't know if this is a result of the actual tariffs or exactly what's going on. I've heard quite a few different rumors. Maybe you guys have heard some in chat you can let me know of, but USPS has said that packages from China and Hong Kong will be accepted again after a temporary suspension. So we had these packages suspended. The U.S. Postal Service on Wednesday halted in order to suspend incoming shipments from China that threatened to severely disrupt trade between the two major economies. A day after announcing the suspension in the wake of President Trump's tariffs on China, the Postal Service said in an online update that it would continue accepting all international inbound mail and packages from China and Hong Kong posts. It added it was working to implement an efficient collection mechanism for the new China tariffs to ensure the least disruption to package delivery. Letters and flats were not included in the suspension, the Postal Service said. On Tuesday, Beijing announced it would counter Mr. Trump's new 10% tariff on Chinese goods with a retaliatory, tariffs of its own. China said starting next Monday, it would implement a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, along with a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large engine cars imported from the U.S. Mr. Trump's tariffs increase also eliminated a duty-free exemption for low-value packages coming from China. The de minimis exemption allows goods valued at $800 or below to come into the United States without paying duties or certain taxes. But it has faced scrutiny due to a surge in shipments claiming the exemption in recent years. U.S. officials pointed to the growth of Chinese-founded online retailers such as Temu as a key factor behind that increase, and Tuesday's halt had threatened to delay parcels for both companies from entering the country. U.S. officials have also said the growth in shipments make it harder to screen for goods for security risks. China slammed the U.S. suspension Wednesday, calling it an unreasonable suppression. As a matter of principle, I want to point out that we urge the United States to stop politicizing trade and economic issues and using them as tools, and to stop the unreasonable suppression of Chinese companies, Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jin told a regular press briefing when asked about the development. Mr. Trump says he plans to speak with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in the coming days. Now, I had heard that there was also worry specifically about dangers in the postal service, or basically dangers of shipments coming from China. I don't know if that is, conspiracy theory, fact, or any basis for it. This particular article, I guess, got changed as well since I opened it up earlier today. So how much, it is always funny when China, they'll basically force an American company to stop paying an individual for calling Taiwan a country. But then as soon as you put tariffs, they're like, this is against my freedoms. And it's like, it's all manipulative speech, and obviously it's being politicized in return. The impact for crypto miners is going to be quite detrimental, seeing that we have no crypto mining manufacturing in the United States. We barely are starting to get off the floor with silicon manufacturing at all. It's going to increase the upstart costs for cryptocurrency mining. I would presume that eventually that does trickle down to older and used units, depending on where we go with this particular cycle. We will have a war over Bitcoin. That is clear that is a brewing. There's going to be a hashing war eventually, and there's definitely going to be a supply war. Right now, if you look at it from a strategic perspective, I think that the U.S. and the Trump administration, with looking at a Bitcoin reserve, is focusing on the supply war. However, the real war will be on the hash powers. And I think China has a massive advantage in that. And we may end up in a position where, we really are talking about not letting China have more than 51% of the network. Oh, I don't know where Jason Lowery is, but he definitely needs to be notified, and he needs to be on these advisory boards. Some good news coming out of the administration early on was that we were going to see lowering energy costs. That would stimulate the mining economy, and we need to see that. We're going to be going up against, basically, U.S. side mining corporations are going to be going up against countries. I've been saying this for many, many years. It still looks like that's the path we're going down to me. And it's going to be extremely difficult for private companies to compete with the hash power of a country if they so decide to do so. And if we start seeing Western countries begin to play a supply war of Bitcoin, buying it all up, well, China doesn't even have to buy it all up because they can build the miners to take over the network and never ship or sell to a Western country ever again. That would be crazy. In other news, Elon Musk has proposed blockchain for the U.S. Treasury transparency. Now, Elon Musk has publicly supported the idea of implementing blockchain technology for the U.S. Treasury to ensure full transparency of government spending. This proposal suggests that citizens could track taxpayer dollars in real time. Various posts and web sources indicate that Musk's team has been granted access to Treasury payment systems, potentially as part of the initiative for transparency or efficiency. Now, what does this mean? We did see that when he was talking about it, he did hint towards XRP. And so I suppose that could go and affect the wider cryptocurrency market. I would assume that if you're going to use blockchain, though, you would build something from the ground up for this as a purpose-built blockchain. There are options, whether it's like a parallel chain of some sort, that could be something that's utilized. I did see Tron Black, by the way, I did see Tron Black from Ravencoin say, Ravencoin's built exactly for this, which I found fun, so that was funny and cool. I would assume that you would want something completely separate, but we'll see where they go from here. I mean, obviously, blockchain technology is going to be integrated into everything over the next 4 years. And it's what we've been waiting on. And, you know, I might even adjust my Bitcoin top prediction up much higher at this point to something like 280,000 or something from the 210. Because we're seeing so much going on with lightening of regulation, adoption from governments, banks, and all of the above. A ton of money coming into the market potentially. The question is how much of it will be paper Bitcoin like the ETFs. Eventually the paper Bitcoin fails though. And that's really where Bitcoin will shine and things will get really, really weird really, really quickly. Especially when people figure, the normal person figures out that it's better to cash out their 401k and hold Bitcoin and self-custody it over leaving it in an ETF. That completely changes the entire market. And it only takes one F up for people to see that. One large screw up from one of these large hedge funds, and it'll be the new way that everybody holds their crypto, is to self-custody it. It's going to be really cool, I think. I don't know any reports from anyone in particular as to what chain would be hinted to be utilized, other than, like I said, the XRP tweet hint from Musk himself. I haven't seen anything else. You know, the boomers are really into XRP, you know, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. I think they're wrong, but maybe they're right. But I think they're wrong. Enough said. Here's more. It was just written out. Overall, nothing was mentioned in particular to the actual crypto in and of itself, or the blockchain that technology that would be utilized. And there hasn't been anything confirmed. But I did pull this up just to review and make sure. Let's get into the fun crypto mining news, starting with a new GPU mineable project called the Quai or Q or Key AI or QAI. I don't know. Anyways, QAI. I did look this up at one point, and I don't know. And there's tokens. One of the tokens is called Chi. Anyways, here's what they're touting. They're saying unprecedented scalability of up to 50,000 transactions per second. That would be pretty impressive. You know, a lot of the talk over the past few years has really, the focus has shifted from transactions per second to blocks per second. Obviously with the influence of Caspa in this particular case. Now, the problem has been that we haven't seen that 10 to 100 BP, that 100 BP promised BPS, which is really where Caspa becomes the fastest network out. Right now, everything as far as transaction speeds go, you know, Solana's been really quick. Tron, some other ones like that. Highest TPS blockchain. I did have this list before. Okay, so ICP's at the top. Solana 65,000 transactions a second, 50,000 on Taraxa. The only one we really have to worry about is Solana. So if we have a GPU mineable proof of work cryptocurrency that can legitimately hit 50,000 transactions per second and actually has some sort of DeFi built on and a good wallet and blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff, then that would be great. So you can mine on the mainnet and solo mine it. All the docs are in the links in the description down below. You can also utilize Clore, Vast AI, and a cache for cloud mining if you do prefer. Mining pools right now include Lucky Pool, Alpha Mine, Cryptex, ULA, and I believe Hero Miners. Yep, Hero Miners right here. I would recommend going and mining on something other than the K1 pool or Hero Miners if possible, just to distribute the network. But obviously, if you're stateside, you got like pool.cryptex and Hero Miners. There's that. There is a tutorial for solo mining, so I don't have to do that tutorial. Thank God. I will watch it and see if the tutorial makes sense. If it doesn't, then fine, I'll do something. But I haven't gone through it to see what the tutorial looks like at this point. I'm really busy. It is what it is. So, other things are that the initial reward per block is 9.77 per block. Now, there are two different tokens. There's Chi and then the Quai, or whatever, QAI. So keep that in mind. So there is already, obviously, tokens on the network. DeFi is available. They do have a pretty good wallet. I believe it's called this Pelagus wallet. I haven't gone into too much detail. I'll do a WTF is and get up to date with you guys on that. It says on February 19th will mark the activation of the transactions, followed by the introduction of the Chi tokens on March 19th, completing our dual token model. And you can join them for building a scalable, decentralized infrastructure. Now, that does mean, of course, until February 19th, I believe, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you won't actually get any transactions until then. So talk to the pools, figure it out, or go watch one of the how to mine videos. So there you go. That's the new token, the new hot token out if you're interested in mining it. Oh, and as I promised, I'll show you what this is getting over here. 1 second. Oh! So right now, which is basically Kapow, as you guys can see, the RTX 5080 is getting 57 mega hash a second at 231 watts in software, 263 watts at the wall. And the overclocks applied are going to be the plus 3000 memory offset, and the core clock is locked at 2200 megahertz for an efficiency of essentially 0.25 mega hash per watt. So there you go. I hope that was entertaining for you guys. We did get a new announcement from Clore AI as well. They have launched their app version 0.1, and that includes an on-demand marketplace with all the functionality of the web version. They now have advanced filtering options for a seamless experience. A Gigaspot marketplace, so you can instantly rent a rig and have it appear directly into your Hive farm, which I'm going to go over the guide on this later on so you guys can learn how to do it. I have an old guide for this, which is actually spinning up the Docker container and all of that. Now there's a one-click mode, so that makes it easier. We'll have to see how ready it is. It does say a note on this that currently there is a 650 megabyte limit for miners. If you need more space, you need to delete some unnecessary miners. Also, Gigaspot allows bulk renting for large-scale operations. If the prices are good enough, it might beat out, NiceHash. Also, because it's Hive, you can run custom miners, which means it really broadens the horizon for speculative mining. I've done a lot of speculative mining with Clore. I've done a lot of speculative mining with Vast. Very good options, a lot cheaper than NiceHash. Also, it allows you to do things that NiceHash doesn't allow you to do. So there's that. Plus, non-KYC, because damn the man saved the blockchain. There's a watch list and a blacklist, so keep track of the best servers and avoid unreliable ones with their customizable lists. There is a POH marketplace, so you can rent coins from others to boost your earnings while renting your own servers. And they have updated to version 0.4 Hive OS for both Gigaspot and On Demand. There is 2 different releases. There is a Windows version and a Mac version. And you can download them now. Check out the link in the description if you're interested. So here we go. What we're going to talk about now is going to be the confluxhub.io. And there is a governance vote going on for Conflux right now to increase the proof of work base block reward. Conflux price, I haven't checked. Let's go look at what that is right now. Conflux is currently running at 11 cents. It's definitely gone down. If we go all, what was their peak? Yeah, their peak was like $1.30, something around there, back in 2021. They launched, I believe, in like 2019, something like that. Anyways, Chinese blockchain, proof of work only, octopus algorithm, or GPU only, octopus algorithm. So this impacts GPU mining. If you have a Fluent wallet, which looks like this, and you can go vote, I highly recommend that you go vote if you think this is good. Obviously, it's going to increase emissions, but it could bring miners back to the network, which is what I think they're doing. So go vote. I don't know how I feel. You know, obviously changing emissions rules has always been up in the air with me, as far as like, I think you should just have a stated emissions schedule and leave it. But, you know, there's been a ton of discussion surrounding this for a very long time. It is good that they're allowing people to vote on it. So there is that. There are some other ones you can vote on as well, including interest rate, which I think ups it from 4.08% to 8.16%. A storage point prop, which would basically double it. And a base fee sharing prop, which would take it from 50% to 67%. So that's all the things going on in GPU mineable proof of work cryptocurrencies today. QAI, Clore AI, and Conflux. I'll be sure to update you guys with all of the latest GPU mineable news and keep you updated on that. If you want to learn to mine the new coin, like I said, Rapid Mining has a how-to on that. It's pretty straightforward. It's not very difficult to do. It's ProgPal. I think most of y'all can figure it out. If we need to do a node guide, I'll let you know. A node guide would go up on sonofatech.locals.com if we need one. Maybe they need one for Linux. We'll see. Now, there is an interesting statistic that's been coming out for the RTX 1590, where they've been seeing 5% performance drops when running the 3x8 pin power cables. So I've ordered a new power supply for the test bench. I promise you, I'm getting that done. And I'm going to test. So I'm getting one, and then I'm going to test with this 5080 and see if the 5080 is having the same performance issues in the bedroom. And if it is, we'll talk about it. But right now, as you can see, early consumers should be aware of the power adapters being used on the 5090 SKUs. 4x8 pin connectors are a must. So here's what's interesting. Okay. And maybe I misunderstood this all the way. You can use a 4x8 pin adapter, which helps, right? So it says that while this is a pretty standard concept, Computer Base has actually tested out NVIDIA's RTX 5090 on a 3x8 pin and 4x8 pin adapters to see how the drop in power figures leads to the performance degradation. Interestingly, supplying 100 watts less power than the optimal number leads to around a 5% drop in rasterized tests. The GPU was tested on 575 watts, 450 watts, and 400 watt TDPs, and it seems like limiting the power supply does not make a noticeable difference, although that is indeed obvious. The interesting part here is that the SKU was functional with a 3-pin connection, but the source says that the GPU didn't work on a 2x8 pin connectors, which means that operating the RTX 5090 on 300 watts is no longer an option. Now for mining guys, it might actually be better, and I'm kind of curious. So I'm going to get one of these 2-pin, and I'm going to put the 2-pin in on the 5080 and see if we drop the power level down. It might actually be a benefit in a mining scenario is what I'm saying, to drop from a 4-pin to a 3-pin on the 5090 to reduce the power consumption, because it's probably core related, not memory related. And another thing we can try is on the 5080 we can go from a 3-pin to a 2-pin and see if the power levels come down even further. That would be really cool. Also, I need to test the 16 pins. So I got a lot of things that I'm going to go through and test here. So by having a 4x8 pin power connector on board, you are supplying the RTX 5090 with potentially 600 watts of power. And this figure is indeed necessary for hefty AIB variants like the ROG Astral GeForce RTX 5090, which is said to be pretty power hungry unit. NVIDIA providing users the option to run the GPU on 450 watts is indeed a great measure, since this way the company makes sure that not having the right power doesn't affect the functionality of the GPU, but it surely will have an influence on the performance. Since NVIDIA's RTX Blackwell GPUs have dropped into the markets recently, we expect a lot more stories to unfold, with one being the SKU getting bricked due to unknown issues likely associated with the BIOS, the onboard driver for the PCI connection, and make sure you are operating your SKUs at ideal conditions, since after the 12V HPWR fiasco, we can never be sure. Now, I have been hearing some reports on various tech channels that the 5090 has been catching fire at the connector. So be aware of that. You might even be more beneficial to run your 5090 on 3 and reduce the power manually like that. Just an idea. All right, so we have an update in the Xeggex fiasco, actually coming from non-KYC. This is more a public service announcement from non-KYC to get people to stop messaging them because they are getting inundated with messages from Xeggex users. So they said, we've been receiving a ton of DMs from people asking if we can fix certain issues or if we own Xeggex. Over the past 48 hours, we also have been getting support tickets from users who have an Xeggex account. No, we are not the owners of Xeggex, nor do we have legal relationships with them. Almost 2 years ago, we made a deal to use Xeggex software as a base, and then developed our own exchange on top of that. The only connection is that one of our developers also works for Xeggex, and yes, we help each other out in development. So work smarter, not harder. At the moment, he's working his ass off with Xeggex devs to get things restored. We only know what you know. The Xeggex CEO was hacked and lost contact with all devs. We've also had very little communication. We suspect it has some sort of social engineering or a SIM swap, but we're not certain. That's kind of what I think too. Simple reason, we don't know. At non-KYC, we decided to disable all access to Xeggex's wallet servers the moment we noticed the issue to prevent further damage. Don't blame us, we're actually protecting you. That's why most altcoin assets are still there. Thank me later. Our devs have the ability to access those servers to fix issues and install the new listings. So we're also able to restrict access from anyone. As far as we know, there's a database connection problem, and both the Xeggex and non-KYC devs are working to resolve it. Fingers crossed. Some of the Xeggex developers have their own funds stuck as well, so trust us, they're highly motivated to fix this situation. And stop blaming them. Do you really think that they'll work harder if they're getting a load of negativity over issues they're not even responsible for? And it says, this message is not from the Xeggex CEO, nor is it a funds are Seifu announcement. We simply are tired of receiving countless DMs and private messages, so we want to clarify our position. I know a lot of people are saying like Xeggex is a rug, blah, blah, blah. This was the same thing that everybody said with Trade Ogre. I don't think Xeggex is a rug. They make too much money to want to rug anybody. That's how I think about it. I think they just screwed up. And I think they got either social engineered, and I think that their CEO has way too much access to their infrastructure. That's what I think. I think it was basically bad cybersecurity at the end of the day. We'll just have to see if they can actually recover it. As a quick note, though, let's go double check and make sure there's no updates from Xeggex themselves. There is not, so we'll move on from there. Let's go ahead and do the Rig War submission for the day. I'm going to go ahead and get it running right now. Today's submission is from Gombies, and the rig name is 4060 Ti. So I assume all of these GPUs here in this 4U server case are 4060 Ti's. They are all Asus dual series GPUs, and it is in the 4U 4W40 mining rack. The motherboard is the H110 D3A CF from and it has an Intel i5 6600K CPU clocked at 3.5 gigahertz. There is 8 gigabytes of memory and a 120 gigabyte SATA SSD. Powering the entire unit is an EVGA 1300 watt PSU that you can see back there in the back. And for the risers, he's using the Ulitang Carte PCIe riser. I don't know what SKU, so 007s, 006s, I'm not sure. He didn't list that here. Now, the operating system he is running is Hive OS, and at the time of writing this, he was mining Dynex. This is the first 40 series GPU submission that we have had on the channel ever, so congratulations to Gombies for that. I am a huge fan of the server cases. Of course, my only recommendation is that you remove the fans and the fan shrouds when utilizing a 4U server case so that you don't damage the fans with your high-powered server fans blowing onto them and spinning in the wrong direction. That is something I had to learn the hard way with my Rosewell 4U server cases and the RX 5700 XTs, and I have lost a lot of good fans due to that. So later on down in the month, we will have a vote on the Rig Wars. If you want to submit your rig, check out the form submission on Google Docs and submit your rig for a chance to be featured in an episode of the Crypto Mining Show. Finally, as always, I like to try to end it with a reaction. Today we're going to be reacting to the Financial Wolf and him shutting down his basement crypto mining farm.
After running,
if the window wasn't messed up. We'll fix that right now. Okay, So I wanted to see, obviously, Financial Wolf, he's a larger YouTuber, I think 276,000 subscribers. What I was curious about is, you know, this is more of like a finance bro YouTube channel who was also mining, and he shut it down. So I kind of wanted to hear, you know, what the plebs were saying, you know, what the mainstream audience was saying about crypto mining.
After running crypto miners in my home for nearly a year, I recently decided to shut it down. And in this video, I'm going to break down how much I made mining crypto altcoins and why I eventually decided to cease mining operations.
He bought crypto or Caspa miners. Well, I could have told you not to do that, brother.
In my home completely. But first, let me give you guys a tour of the crypto miners in my home. First up, down here in my basement, we have an Ice River KS1, which is known for mining a cryptocurrency called Caspa. And getting this entire setup going cost me a lot more than I expected. Since first, I had to install this 240 volt outlet, which somehow cost me around $900. Then next, I bought this.
Yeah, you should get a new electrician. I don't know, like with inflation and everything. I mean, if he had to do a circuit, if you had to add a circuit, or if you had to upgrade, well, if you had to upgrade the panel, you're going to be in the thousands.
This PDU, which cost around $130, connecting to this C13 to C14 cable, which was another 10 bucks. And finally, the Ice River KS1 was worth around $2,700 when I got it. At the time I started mining Caspa, it was listed as the second most profitable cryptocurrency to mine, listed right behind Bitcoin, with other cryptos like Monero or Litecoin coming next.
Yeah, anytime you see a cryptocurrency listed like that, it's typically too late. I don't know. That's just what I've found. Unless you're in the scenario where it's like an active bull run, that's typically a bad sign.
But before I get into my entire experience mining Caspa, let's get this machine going for old time's sake by connecting the Ethernet cable to my router and running it all the way through my house and down the stairs. And now that we've ran the Ethernet cable all the way down to the basement, we're gonna go ahead and plug it into the machine. And with the machine now plugged in, we're gonna go ahead and turn it on, and pretty soon it's gonna get very loud. And there we go, guys. The machine is super loud now. That's how you know it's really working. Now, to complete the setup process for your miner and turn down the fan speed, all you have to do is have an application installed on your computer like Angry IP Scanner. This works for both Mac and Windows computers. And then once you run the software, you'll be able to find the IP for your miner, since instead of a red dot next to it, it'll have a green dot since it already has an Ethernet cable connected to it. And then once you find the IP address for your miner, you're going to type it into your browser, and it'll take you to this Ice River website where you can enter the username admin, and the default password for all Ice River KS1 machines is 12345678. But obviously, since I already set up my machine, I have my own custom password. And now that we're logged in, you guys can see the machine has been running for 12 minutes. And to turn down the fan speed, we are going to go to this mining settings tab and put in 45%, click save, and you'll notice the miner downstairs got a lot quieter. But with our miner now working hard again in the basement, this machine originally began running in January of 2024, and from the beginning, it was earning around 100 Caspa daily, which at the time was worth around 10 cents each. Unlike Bitcoin, Caspa follows what's known as a gradual emission reduction model, which essentially is a fancy way of saying, unlike how Bitcoin has a halving event every 4 years where half as many rewards are given to miners, Caspa reduces the block reward by a fixed percentage every second of 0.002%. But over a year, that results in a 100% block reward reduction. And this exponential decay model means that literally every second this machine is running, it made less money than it did the second before.
Yep.
This can be proven when you take a look at my miner's earnings over time. In the beginning, when I was mining Caspa, I was receiving at least 100.
How many people didn't realize this when they bought their Caspa miners? Does anybody know?
Caspa every single day, but after a few months went by, my payouts dipped to 100 Caspa except every 2 or 3 days. And taking a look at this chart that maps out my first 3 months of Caspa earnings, you guys can see January and February were by far my best months, since I brought in just about 2,000 Caspa in February, and back then the price was 10 cents each, so I made about $200. Then in February, the price of Caspa went on a massive run, going from 10 cents to 17 cents each, and I mined even more Caspa in February than I did in January, since instead of the miners running for just 15 or 20 days in January, they ran the entire time. My USD earnings for the month came out to $480. But
I tried to tell everyone that it wasn't going to be a good idea.
much less profitable for me. And I
Oh,
also
well.
decided to sell some of my Caspa coin and trade into other cryptocurrencies like Solana and eventually Bitcoin. I sold 1,000 Caspa on March 1st and 1,500 Caspa on March 8th for $398.50. And I ended the month of March mining just 1,435 Caspa. With the proceeds from the Caspa sale, I bought a total of 2.811 Solana between March 1st and then again on March 6th. I then sold 2 Solana coins for Bitcoin in June, resulting in a $160 profit, versus if I'd held Caspa until now, I would have lost money since the coin went from 17 cents down to 12 cents. At this point,
Well, and now Caspa's at like 10 cents right now. $0.09. Yeah, I think it'll run lower too.
mining Caspa, I stopped hodling any of the currency I was mining, instead selling it for Bitcoin with another major sell order on June 16th for 6,000 Caspa at 15 cents each. And all of those funds went into Bitcoin, which is now worth $1,336.84 off a 908.
If Caspa was ASIC resistant, it'd be worth a lot more money right now.
$15 investment, and if those funds would have stayed in Caspa, it'd only be worth $730 right now. The reason I think Caspa is underperforming,
You know why? Because they would essentially have people that want to utilize their ecosystem. But now it's like, well, Mara controls all of the Caspa volume, so who wants to participate? No one.
other cryptocurrencies in this recent run-up is because, well, looking at this chart, it absolutely exploded throughout 2022 and 2023, especially going on a major run-up at the end of 2023. The coin's also still sitting at a market cap of $3 billion, making it the 45th largest.
Raven has other issues, like no real good decentralized finance options. I've said this so many times. I don't think Raven Coin's ecosystem is good. It's hard to use, and that's why nobody uses it.
Cryptocurrencies, so it's by no means a small fish. I just think because it had such a major run-up relatively recently, there might not be another one for a while. But that said, I personally have at least 98% of my crypto portfolio invested in Bitcoin, so 8,500 of the 8,620 Caspa I mined has been exchanged for 0.0182 Bitcoin, which is currently worth $1,747. And I also still have some Solana and Caspa in the portfolio, but not much. Altogether, the total proceeds mining for 6 months with the Ice River KS1 machine was $1,900, which is obviously less than the total cost for the setup, but a big reason I stopped mining in June was because of high electricity costs. At my house in Milwaukee, my electricity cost is 17 cents per kilowatt, which I think is slightly above the national average, and means that this Ice River KS1 machine will cost us $2
Save us, Daddy Trump.
daily to run. That's about $70 to $75 per month in expenses, and means in the 20 days of June we were running the machine, we profited only $24.65 after electricity costs.
It's still
and
a
now
profit.
things are even worse, because when you look at the profitability of the
worse.
machine, it's only set to make us 69 cents per day, and that's because as more powerful machines hit the market and take
They
up more of the
did,
network
Crypto
hash rate,
Mikkel.
older
And of
machines
course
like
they
mine
would.
start being less profitable. And since we started mining with the machine in my basement 3 days ago, we've only earned a little over 50 cents, which means after electricity costs, we're down like $6 to $7 already. So guys, I think it's time to call it quits by going down the stairs and turning our machine
So is
off.
this just the
It's
pot?
literally
I've noticed like all the young kids creating their mining YouTube videos. It's like, I gotta turn on, I gotta turn off, and it's like, it's kind of funny.
so much quieter already. It's the
This
end
is
of an era.
Financial
A year later
Wolf.
since I started mining,
I'll
Caspa
link
is
the
now
video at
sitting
the
as
end.
the 7th most profitable
Make sure I get that
cryptocurrency
like.
to mine, with newer machines like the Ice River KS3 still breaking even. If you had super cheap electrical costs like my Bitcoin miners out in Iowa. Another coin I tried mining a few months ago is Cadena, which is currently listed as the 22nd most profitable crypto to mine, and in total we only made about $21.74 mining Cadena for a whole 4 months, and I spent more than that on electricity costs for sure.
At the end of the day though, with a cheap machine like this that costs maybe a couple $100 online and plugs in with the regular 120 volt outlet in the wall, is it really gonna make you that much money? And it's turning on right now. But comment down below, should I keep this machine running even though it's losing me money in case Cadena pumps?
But that said, let's continue with another crypto altcoin mining story from my friend Mark, who got in super early mining a small cap crypto project known as Helium Mobile. That
No.
ended up making him $100,000 before crashing.
Okay, so Helium Mobile is actually
No.
a 5G phone plan. I have it myself.
No.
And what it basically does is you can connect your
Another
own
Helium
internet to
advertisement.
a module or a hotspot, and it will relay that internet, providing cell phone coverage for 5G network.
And the people running these cell phone hotspots outside their home got rewarded in Helium tokens.
So it's not like Bitcoin where it's proof of work and solving math problems or anything
Proof
like
of
that. They're really just
coverage.
mobile hotspots that are relaying internet. Because
They call
I'm
it
providing
proof of coverage.
I get paid for
Yeah.
providing the coverage, and when people use and connect to my hotspots,
He
I get
said,
paid for sharing.
want to
my
know how
internet.
I
So
don't
how
know
did
what
you
I'm
first,
doing?
like, hear about this, and, like, when did you
Helium
decide to
Mobile.
invest?
Yeah, so back in 2021, I bought one of the first.
You wanna know how
miners
I'm good
for
at
the
losing money?
original Helium network, which
Nah,
is
I don't know.
IoT,
It's
Internet
fine.
of Things. Long
I
story
just
short,
can't
made a
stand the
little bit of
whole
money off
helium
that,
thing.
But it ended up not working out, and I was at a loss.
This little box is part of a billion-dollar network no one uses. It's called a helium miner, and I was gifted it by a friend who told me that it would pay me every day just to sit on a shelf. I've made $22 with this little thing, which is a 20th of the cost of the actual machine.
But because I was in the space and keeping up with all the news, I realized that Helium was launching their new Helium mobile plan, which was going to be a phone plan with much more utility. But when I first got involved with the project, I was actually buying the miners before the token was even live. So I was really taking a gamble on it, and I got in super early. So I bought the miner, and then I was paid in Helium mobile tokens, but I actually couldn't sell them or do anything with the Helium mobile token. It was in this genesis period where if you were one of the people to get these miners online before the token was live or anything like this, you were paid.
I mean, isn't this kind of the story with everything now in crypto? Right? Because it's like, I mean, it's the same thing with Caspa. If you got in super early and mined with CPUs and GPUs, you were great. If you bought, oh, I'm on an old video. I thought I clicked the new one. I don't know. This says a month old. Anyways,
Massive amounts
there's a
of
new
this
one for a
token,
Doge
which
miner?
further down the line I could sell. Pretty much for the first year, I want to say, I was just mining in Detroit because nothing too
dude, this kid makes really good videos though. Like for real.
much happened with the project. The price ended up skyrocketing. And then from there, I was hooked. I realized, wow, I can actually sell my tokens if I want to now. People are starting
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
to learn about it and gain traction. And most importantly, they were announcing these new boosted locations. So in certain cities, you'd have multiple.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what he's saying, right? Get in really early and then you make a lot of money and then you dump on everyone.
Suppliers if you provided coverage in certain areas. And Miami, Florida was one of these places, and I really wanted to get into the ground floor and be one of the first people to deploy in the boosted locations.
So you essentially rented an apartment in Miami. You spent quite a bit of money to get a place just to put a couple machines in there, pretty much, right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy idea, but I ended up finding a location, renting an apartment just so I had home base to deploy across a couple locations. But at the peak of it, I want to say it was making like $300 per day off the machines in the boosted locations.
Damn, and how much was like the nest egg of helium that you had?
So at the peak, it was over $100,000 I had in Helium mobile token.
Damn, and that was probably off like what? How much did you put in?
I would say maybe 5K total in machines that I purchased.
But after 3 months of maintaining a high price point, Helium mobile coins started to crash. And although there's a lot of speculation behind why this is, from Helium significantly reducing the profitability of older machines to people on Reddit breaking down problems with mobile coins.
Well, isn't that the... so I was thinking about that. Just take the... Because I'm not going to call it a Ponzi. I get it. A lot of people feel that way. But when you are talking about like networking equipment, computer equipment in general, especially like networking technology has significantly improved astronomically over the past couple years. Like we're already on like 5G is fully deployed and everywhere, right? At this point. And then Wi-Fi 7's out. Like I assume that it's just not going to perform as well as the newer equipment. So it's not fully on them
tokenomics
to make
main
old
problem
equipment
I found behind altcoins like Helium
get paid
Mobile
more.
or even coins like Caspa is there's no long-term incentive for people to hold on to it. Unlike Bitcoin, which is experiencing a lot of mainstream adaptation from hedge funds to entire countries holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower.
Well, Warhog doesn't have a good
Well,
marketplace
for the
right now,
altcoin market,
tactics.
It's driven almost entirely on speculation. So you're
Xeggex
gonna
is
see
shut
much
down.
larger swings in their price.
So now I think it's worth around $10,000, but I will say, after the big crash, I got spooked and I started selling some off consistently. I made 8 grand converted into USDC, so that's locking in 8 grand of profits, and then I have around 10 grand worth in the token still, which we'll see where that goes. Hopefully it goes back up and goes crazy someday.
Ultimately, long term, I plan to keep investing in Bitcoin mining, where I currently operate 2 machines at a low-cost facility in rural Iowa. And if you guys are interested in investing in Bitcoin mining for as little as $100, I'm launching a Reg CF where I plan to scale up the operation in rural Iowa. So I'll leave a link down below in the description for you guys who are interested. And otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.
I wouldn't do any of the mini, like, I'm glad he's working on something, and that's cool. I wouldn't recommend, like, I want to say to protect everyone, like, I wouldn't recommend doing any of those, like, shared miner schemes. They usually don't end well. I haven't seen any end well, anyways. Go leave him a like. He's really, like, his personality's great. I see why he has a lot of subscribers. His editing's great. Bad decision on Caspa, though. But, I mean, a lot of people made that decision with the Caspa ASICs. And it's the same story, too. It's like, you can't say it's any different than Helium. Like, what, Greater Good did well on Caspa ASICs because he got them early enough. You know, if you got shipped one by one of the manufacturers, like Red Panda did or something like that, then you did really well. Unfortunately, and this is why I don't want to do any of the sponsorships, is because it's essentially flawed. Like, if I'm going to teach people how to be successful in crypto mining, I can't be taking advantage of the YouTube channel to get access to equipment early when that's not indicative of the actual real world performance of that particular unit. Does that make sense? So that's why, like, my strategies are different. I speculative mined Caspa and let everyone know. I traded that Caspa out for Bitcoin miners, and now I'm running, you know, pretty much 100% Bitcoin mining, and then some GPU mining, which is still largely speculative. So yeah, and I think that's the thing, is like, everybody, so this is how I know. And I'll tell you, at the end of the day, it's a very simple method I use. As soon as I'm too excited, I say it's time to sell. When I'm depressed, I buy. It's that simple at the end of the day. If I opened up my Caspa wallet, when I opened it up and I was like, oh my God, then I sat down and I was like, what does that mean? I was like, that means everybody else right now is like, oh my God, and thinks it's going to go higher, which means it's not going to go higher. And what is the best move I could make? Well, everybody's really depressed about Bitcoin mining right now. And so they're selling off all the Bitcoin miners for pennies on the dollar. I'm going to go buy a bunch of those. And that's basically how I run my business. When I'm really excited, I sell. And when I'm depressed about something, I buy it. Game over. It seems to work. I don't know. I survived a couple bear markets off of it. So it is what it is. Slow and low, my friend. Slow and low and always generating revenue. That's how I feel about it. All right, boys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like, comment, subscribe button down below. And I will see you next Tuesday. Enjoy the B-roll.